lecturing him on the 7 letters or the 7 epistles to the 7 churches of Asia. And here's what I did. I put a map in the PowerPoint. And I did not overwrite the new PowerPoint to this. So for 2 weeks, you'll have to mentally get the picture that we're in modern-day Turkey. Patmos, the island that where John is currently, as he's receiving these visions and these messages for the 7 churches, is about 24 miles south of Ephesus, which is the first congregation he wrote to. And we looked at that letter last week, and we saw that Ephesus was a cold church. They were great doctrinally, but they had lost, John says, their first love. That is, they had developed the wrong attitude in regard to the doctrine that they were standing so well on. And so Jesus warns them, gives them a warning to make change. Now, I like lists. I like lists of names. But for some reason, and this has always been the case even throughout school years, back in high school and stuff, you give me a list, I'll memorize the list, and in recounting the list, it could be a list of 5, it could be a list of 20. I'll get every one of them but one. There's always one missing in my list for some reason. One of the ways helps us more easily remember the names of these cities is taking the first letter of each name. The first 3 you get ESP. What's ESP? Extrasensory perception. The next 3 you have TSP, and T rhymes with E. So you got ESP, TSP. And then the very last one is Laodicea, L for last. That helps me remember. Here's where I mess up. I know E is Ephesus. I know T is Thyatira. I know L, the last one, is Laodicea. But you got 2 SPs right in the middle. But nevertheless, that's where we are right now. And you might have an easier time with that than I do. So you can try that if you want. We're in chapter 2, and we're looking at Smyrna. And when we see Smyrna, Smyrna is a concerned church. A concerned church. Now, if we were to have one who could remember to change the PowerPoint from the old one to the new one, you would see this pretty orange and blue map up here. And you would see marked the island of Patmos, about 25 miles south of Ephesus. And you would see Ephesus, and then a circle of numbers. And as we go through these letters into these cities, they form a circle in order. And so Smyrna is just a little bit north to the northwest of Ephesus. And so that's where we are. It's verses 8 through 11. Smyrna was an extremely beautiful city. In fact, it had a nickname. You know, cities have names, cities have reputations. You know, when we think of Las Vegas, what do we think of? Gambling, Sin City, right? Sin City. When we think of New York, what do we think of? All right, who said money? No. Maybe back in the 70s, crime, early 80s crime. Nowadays, it's a big tourist place. You can think of Times Square.
Big Apple?
The Big Apple. There you go, the Big Apple. And so Smyrna was a beautiful city. It was called the Ornament of Asia. And that's the area that we're in, Asia Minor, the province of Asia Minor, modern-day Turkey. And so it was called the Ornament of Asia. Some called it the first city of Asia. It was also known as the flower of Asia. But it was reported to be a very, very beautiful, beautiful city. It was at the foot of a mountain. And the mountain's name was Mount Pagos. And as you would climb that mountain, there were all these temples, all of these different gods. And it was said that from afar, as you look at the mountain and those golden temples, it looked like the mountain was wearing a crown. Well, one of the attractions to Smyrna was a temple to the god Zeus, and it was huge. The dimensions about 120 feet high, 115 feet square, huge temple. And it connected to another temple called the Temple of Cybele. And between the two temples, it was connected by a street that was made out of golden brick. And that was at the base of the mountain. And so as you look at this mountain, you have all these temples up top, and it looks like a crown, and then you have this golden street connecting the temple of Zeus to this other temple, and it looks like a necklace. So this city, it goes from that, and gets this reputation as being very beautiful. A very ornamental city. Well, let's read what Jesus has to say to them. It begins in verse 8, and it goes through verse 11. It says, "And to the angel of the church in Smyrna write, These things says the first and the last, who was dead and came to life. I know your works, tribulation, and poverty, but you are rich. And I know the blasphemy of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Do not fear any of those things which you are about to suffer. Indeed, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison, that you may be tested, and you will have tribulation 10 days. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. He who overcomes shall not be hurt by the second death." If you remember last week when we looked at Ephesus, all of these letters have a very easy breakdown. You have words of commendation, words of condemnation, and then you have words of compensation. So that's a very easy way to remember the organization of these. Jesus starts out praising them, shows them what they need to correct and what's wrong, and then gives them the result of them making the corrections that he tells them to make. And so that's what we have here. Now, Smyrna is one of two of the 7 congregations that he has nothing bad to say about. Nothing bad. And so we start out with these words of commendation, and he begins to commend them for their loyalty. And he shows them, and he tells them what you've had to endure. And you go through the list, and there's tribulation, a word that means being crushed under the pressure. Sometimes we'll think of the word endurance or patience as it's used in Scripture, and that means to bear under, or to endure under the pressure, to bear under the pressure. And it's a picture of someone holding something very heavy, and they're still holding on, even though it may be painful, it's hard, but they're still holding. This is a word that's just the opposite. It means to be crushed by it. It means to be crushed by it. They are being crushed under the pressure, but they're still staying faithful. And he says here, there's poverty there. And he says that they're enduring the blasphemy of the Jews, who they thought they were in fellowship with God, but really they're ministers of Satan. And these are going to be Jews, and the ministers of Satan. Remember the big temple that's there, the biggest one, that of Zeus. And it's really thought that he's referring to some Jews who have left the Jewish faith, even though they show up at the synagogue every Saturday like a good Jew would do. But in reality, they're worshipers of Zeus. And so they're having to endure that blasphemy.
Mike,
Yes?
what was the god Zeus known for? Why would the Jews associate?
More than likely, and that's a big if, or that's a big what if. We kind of have to more than likely, my guess, and that's what this is, because can't really know 100% for sure. They were either attracted by the immorality of worship, or they were attracted by the commerce it would bring by being associated with the Greeks and the Romans. That would be my guess. But they were playing the hypocrite in saying they were one thing, but really something else. And the church was having to endure them because they were coming in.
What is the second death that's mentioned here?
Give me a minute, and we'll get to that when we get to the words of the words of compensation, and we'll definitely talk about that. And so in verse 9, we read still further that they were enduring these things and they're about to experience an extended period of tribulation. And it's figuratively described here as something that's going to last 10 days. And it may take our minds back to the book of Daniel, as Daniel was tested for a period before he experienced some his trials. You remember the lion's den, and you remember the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fire. And so that could have an allusion to that. And yet the Lord is encouraging them, despite all of these things, remain faithful. And that tends to suggest to us that He's worried about them. He's worried about them. And it could be that without some encouragement, they may be at the very point of wanting to give up. You know, sometimes we can get to that point, and all it takes is just some words of encouragement to keep us going, give us that second wind, if you will. And so He is encouraging them to remain faithful, worried about their part in the future. And as the words of correction has already said, that this is one of two congregations, there are no words of correction here. In fact, as He talks to them, he terms them as being rich despite their poverty. You have all these problems monetarily and with material things, and yet in truth you're rich. And they're rich because they're faithful. They're spiritually rich, which is more valuable than any material goods. Now, getting to verse 10 and 11, He tells them the tribulation is going to come more, and you're going to be tried. You're going to have some problems here. You're going to have more problems. They're going to last, but they're going to end. Notice He gives them the time period. Gives them the time period. These things aren't forever. This isn't the new normal. But they are going to happen. And He tells them to be faithful unto death. I'll give you a crown of life. And then literally, like what many of the Hebrews would do, and much of the literary form of the New Testament mirrors a lot of time the forms of the Old Testament. And what we see is Him repeating Himself in verse 11. When He says, "He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. He who overcomes shall not be hurt by the second death." Now, if we go back over to Revelation 21 and verse 8, I believe it's 21 and verse 8. He's talking about the judgment scene, and he says in verse 8, "But the cowardly, the unbelieving, the abominable, the murderers, sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death." When we think of death, James terms it as a separation of soul and body. Second death is the separation of soul and God. So He's had the ultimate judgment. The second death will occur. That second separation will occur when those who haven't been faithful, when those who live a life of rebellion, those who are separated from God, get permanently separated from God. And hear those words of Jesus to depart. "Depart from me, you cursed."
When John read this, some of these things already happened.
Jesus is talking about the past and the future.
Right.
The past, present, and future. It's all within all of these writings to them.
It's just a warning then.
It's a warning for them to repent. And the importance of it. Remember what's about to happen and why this is being written. It's being written because emperor worship is about to start. It's on the rise. It's already causing problems. It's going to cause more problems as they go further. And He's wanting to make sure they remain under the pressure. They stay faithful. And for these particular congregations, really almost used as we can look at them as a model for us today when they correct these problems that He's pointing out. When they strengthen the good that He's pointing out, those become keys. If we are going to stay faithful, we need to have these same type of characteristics in our lives.
biggest challenge for all of them was emperor worship.
Absolutely.
Rome demanded that, and that was their challenge.
That was the biggest challenge.
Because what are you going to do? You know,
Exactly.
are you going to say okay?
And so he starts with Ephesus. And here's Ephesus. They're good on doctrine, but they're bad on disposition. They've lost the disposition. Their attitude's wrong. And so you take one, and let's bring it on to an individual level today, and then let's place ourselves back in the end of the first century, beginning of the second century. If I am good on doctrine, but bad on disposition, and I try to correct someone's error, how am I going to approach them? I'm not going to approach them by putting myself in their shoes, showing compassion that, hey, I was maybe at one time where they are. I'm going to have that disposition of one that says, well, you're going to hell, dude. You're gone. What are you doing? You're an idiot. You don't see that? You're an idiot. What's going to do that to that person? And so here's a congregation that had that attitude. I may be right in what I'm saying, but I'm saying it in a way that's completely ugly and unloving. And it just pushes people away. And so if the Christians of that day are going to survive in Ephesus, they need someone who's standing strong on doctrine like they are. Continue, Jesus says. But remember your attitude. Otherwise, you're going to push others away.
You know, studying this, in my mind that we may need to be introspective.
Very.
And looking at each of these seven and be introspective about it.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, these things are written not just to be written, not just as a history lesson, although there's a lot of history here, but they're written to help us. Yeah. And when we look at the things Jesus says to correct, and the things Jesus, we need those. We need all of those in the local congregation if we're going to be successful. And that's one of the things. And when we get done with the seven, we're going to bring out some application from the seven before we move on and hopefully actually see some of these. So we have ES, Ephesus, Smyrna, and then P, Pergamos. Oh, before I move on, let me tell you a story. And this is interesting. Who knows who Polycarp is? You ever heard that name before? Polycarp. You've heard it.
Right? One of the popes?
No. He died in 155 AD. In fact, he died on February 23rd, 155 AD. He was born at about 86 AD, if I remember correctly. And so he would have been just a small child when these letters were circulated. Revelation being written around 95 AD. He was a member of the Church of Smyrna. And it's reported of his death, he was killed, burned at stake, because he refused to bow down and say, Caesar is Lord. He refused to give up his allegiance to Jesus. And in his quote, he says, for 86 years, so the 86 I'm thinking of evidently is okay, 86 years I have served Christ, and he has done me no wrong. How then can I blaspheme my King who saved me? And in fact, being burned at the stake, he refused. Normally, he would tie you at the stake. Otherwise, it's so horrible that you would probably try. He refused to be tied, knowing that Christ would give him the endurance to endure the pain of execution. And it was a member of the Church of Smyrna. And so those words, you be faithful unto death, it brings it home of what these people were having to experience. We go on, ES, and then we have P, and that's going to be Pergamos. Pergamos, and we're a cultural church. Pergamos was known as the capital of Asia, very influential city, and it was known for the temples. In fact, the citizenry were called the temple caretakers. If you lived in Pergamos and you told somebody, hey, I'm from Pergamos, They would look at you and say, oh, you're a temple caretaker, because of all the temples that they had there. They were big into the worshiping of the gods, especially Zeus, Dionysus, Athenas, all of these. And in 29 BC, over 100 years before, they were the first city in the Roman Empire to build the first temple to Caesar. See, what Domitian is doing isn't anything new. He's just pulling something from the past and making it big again. But Pergamos was the city in 29 BC to build the first temple and say Caesar is God. And so, erecting that, we can kind of see now why Jesus says some of the things he says to them. Beginning in verse 12, this cultural church, sometimes it's called a compromising church. It says, and to the angel of the church in Pergamos write, these things says he who has the sharp two-edged sword, I know your works and where you dwell, where Satan's throne is, and you hold fast to my name, and did not deny my faith, even in the days in which Antipas was my faithful martyr, who was killed among you where Satan dwells. But I have a few things against you, because you have there those who hold to the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to put a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat those things sacrificed to idols and to commit sexual immorality. Thus you also have those who hold to the doctrine of the Nicolaitans, which thing I hate. Repent, or else I will come to you quickly, and will fight against them with the sword of my mouth. What's in his mouth? The two-edged sword. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To him who overcomes, I will give some of the hidden manna to eat, and I will give him a white stone, and on the stone a new name written which no one knows except him who receives it. Okay, here's this cultural church. Same pattern. Commendation, condemnation, compensation. So Jesus commends them. And he commends them for their courage. Now remember what the city, what they're known for. They're known for their temples. And a citizen of the city is a caretaker of the temple. That's the reputation. Have you ever met anybody from Las Vegas? I was shocked to learn. Las Vegas has what kind of reputation? Sin City, right? Gambling, prostitution's legal. I think in the county, not the city, but I'm not sure. All this ungodliness. But in school, there were 2 students from Las Vegas. Tory Clark was one. Tyler, what was Tyler's last name? His mom worships with Lamar. I didn't take care. Can't remember his name. Okay. Anyway, 2 preaching students from Las Vegas. I remember sitting in the break room one day before it was still there. He was there like our first 6 months. And asking him, what's it like in Vegas, living in Vegas? And come to find out, did you know the church is extremely strong in Las Vegas?
We went there, and I was very impressed. Las Vegas Church of Christ, all on the up and up.
Isn't that something? It's very similar, I think, when I think of Pergamos. Really? Can you imagine? Oh, you're a temple caretaker. You're from Pergamos. Really? You're a Christian? And that just has that equate to my mind. Really? You're from Vegas? And you're a member of the church? Much less you're here to preach? What? But the church is really strong there. And can you imagine what that congregation would have to constantly be on guard against being right in the middle of Sin City? No doubt that's what Pergamos was having to fight. And so here are these words of commendation. You're living where Satan's throne is. You're right at the heart of emperor worship. And you're living right there, and yet you're holding on to my name. That is, they're refusing to say Caesar is Lord. You don't deny the faith. And then he says, if you're remaining against all. And most scholars think that this is, remember, we're in a book of a lot of figurative language, and a lot of apocalyptic figurative language is being used, and most think that Antipas, as a proper name, is standing for all of those, not just a single individual, but all of those martyrs who have given up their life because of emperor worship, refusing to bow. And remember where they are. They're right in the center of it.
Don't you think that Rome demanding emperor worship was more political
Oh,
than
absolutely.
religious? It had nothing to do with their belief in.
Absolutely. The mission had a problem, and you know, we see the problem today in our country. We really do. All these different cultures, and you've got to remember how vast the Roman Empire was, and all the cultures that it had within its borders. And every one of them had a different religion. And so, in an attempt to bring all of these different religions together, to have some kind of bond between them, I want to be your God. Yeah, it wasn't anything. Now, it can go on a little bit further, and there were some micro Caesars in there who really began to believe that, but it was just an attempt to bring them closer together by erasing the religious boundaries. And so, but here's the church right in the middle. Here's the Jews as well. They were caught up in this too, a lot of them. But who were refusing to bow the knee, and they're commended for it. They're doing good. Even with martyrdom, you're standing strong. But, okay, you're courageous. That's a good thing. You stay courageous. But they yielded to the culture around them. They didn't yield to the emperor worship, but they yielded to the culture of the city.
Compromise.
They compromised. There are two doctrines that are mentioned here. The doctrine of Balaam. If you go over to Numbers, the 21st chapter, we read this about this prophet. Numbers 31, I'm sorry. Numbers 31. Numbers 31 and verse 16. Moses is speaking here, but he says, "Look, these women caused the children of Israel through the counsel of Balaam to trespass against the Lord in the incident of Peor, and there was a plague among the congregation of the Lord." Balaam was a false prophet. He pulled them away. Pulled them into idolatry and immorality. And so he pulls them away into this Greek idolatry in a city full of temples to these foreign Greek gods. And as we studied before in Corinth, as we mentioned in Ephesus, this type of worship involved a whole lot of immorality. And so you see the pull. You see the pull. And even though they're not bowing to emperor worship, they're involved in immorality because of the idolatrous worship of the Greek gods that they're allowed to go in. And their allegiance, no doubt, wasn't to the Greek gods, but they were involved with the pleasure of it all. And so there's a warning. Your worship. Watch your worship. Watch who you worship. It's improper worship to be involved in these things. But then he says in in the next verse, he talks about the Nicolaitans. Now, who were the Nicolaitans? We really have no clue. But there are some who are of the mind that the Nicolaitans refers, and this goes back into, I hate to say secular history, because it's more legend than history. It's just when you get into ancient stuff like this, you don't have a whole lot of backup to prove a lot of these things about these smaller individuals. But there are some scholars who equate the Nicolaitans as being followers of Nicholas from Antioch. We read about him one other time in Acts chapter 6 and verse 5. He's one of the 7 that are chosen by the congregation there, by the apostles there to help with Eat, drink, and be merry. Just, not literally merry, but merry, M-E-R-R-Y. Eat, drink, and be merry. Just live your life to the fullest. And so some think that that is what's being talked about. So you have some following the Greek idolatrous worship. You have some following just a life of hedonism, all within the church. And so Jesus is warning them, you're doing good to stay away from the emperor worship. Even when your brothers and sisters are being put to death for it, you're doing good. But you know what? You have some within your number who are worshiping these other gods here, culturally. You have some in your number who are just going off and doing anything their heart desires and following any pleasure that they want. And so you have improper worship, improper wants, all in this congregation. And the church is doing nothing about it. And so he says, you need to change the way you think about this. Make the corrections. You repent or else. And so we have the words of compensation. Those willing to change, they were promised, and I love these pictures that are given. They're promised a fellowship with God. Go back to verse 17. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. Okay, 3 things are mentioned here. To him who overcomes, I will give some of the hidden manna to eat. What in the world does that even mean? What was the manna? What is it? The manna. Remember in the wilderness, the bread from heaven, if possible, this white stuff that's on the ground, they collect, and that's their nutrition. Manna. What is it? Literally in the Hebrew.
It's God's word.
No. Fine. Listen. Manna. But not manna. He's not just going to give them manna from heaven. He's given them the hidden manna. Specific manna. What were the items placed in the Ark of the Covenant? Who remembers? They had a serving of manna. Aaron's rod that budded, the broken tablets. The Ark of the Covenant represented in the Jewish mind, it was lost in 586 BC. It was lost. The temple was destroyed. The Ark of the Covenant's lost. It's hidden. And that Ark of the Covenant represented to the Jewish mindset, sitting in the most holy place, the holiest of holies, on top was the mercy seat, and that was a seat where God dwelt. And when that high priest went in yearly at the Day of Atonement to go in, he was in the presence of God. Here's an allusion, this picture of being in fellowship with God. I'm going to give you part of the hidden manna, the Ark of the Covenant, where God sits. You're going to be back in you're going to be in fellowship with God. You're going to have a part of that hidden manna to eat. Then he says, I will give him a white stone. Why a white stone? What on earth is that?
White sounds like forgiven or something.
White, we think of purity.
I read where the white stone back that time was something that they would collect for admission to certain places. Of course, can carry this on out to heaven. Each person with white stone. Yeah, this commentator said that each person would give a white stone, and with only his name on it, to be distinct from everybody else, and that it would be to have differences in heaven would reflect us. You know, like in singing, that if we all sing the same note, it would be monotonous, but we blend.
We blend together.
And that would be pleasing to God.
Some think it refers to the Roman gladiators. When they were given their freedom, when they had proven themselves and become champions, they were given a white stone for freedom, liberty. And they carried that white stone around as proof. Could be that you're going to be given a white stone, you're going to be freed from Rome, from heart. It could be that it's connected to the next. The third thing, where he says, says, and on the stone, which stone? The white stone, contextually. A new name written, which no one knows except him who received it. In the days of the Roman Empire, it was very common to build with black stone until they wanted to memorialize the building or to dedicate the building. And so on this black wall, they would put a white stone where they would write the name of who the building is dedicated with. Could be there. But whatever it is, it's